Good morning. My bossy producer says we're on the air. It is Wednesday, July 25, 2018, and welcome back to Java with Jerry. We're always glad you come and join us here on Wednesdays. For those of you that don't do it live, don't worry about it. I even had a request this morning asking whether or not this would be recorded. Of course, it's recorded and always available to you at orangesliced.com, or you can get it at YouTube. And of course, if you go to orangesliced.com, you can also sign up to get this as a podcast, and it will come to your device automatically, and then you can listen to it when you're walking the dog or at the gym or doing errands or whatever works for you. But we're always glad that you join us for Java with Jerry and that you stay up with everything that's going on. What will we do today? Well, as always, we'll have a little bit of news stories, or at least my commentary on the news stories. Never the news that you don't know. It's always the news that I find interesting, though. And then we will have one of my great pals and a terrific mind on public policy, Kris, who's a councilwoman in Anaheim. Many of you know her, and if you don't, you are going to meet her today. She's extraordinarily proactive on behalf of the people of Anaheim and actually the region. So we'll talk a little bit about her life in both the public sector and the private sector. So she'll be our guest. And then our feature for today, we always have one, is one of your favorites and mine, How to Speak Millennial. So we have a millennial phrase for you today. All right. Let's start and talk a little bit about the news. National news is really international news this week. I wanted to talk a little bit about the growing tension in Iran and what's going on there. We got a no-nonsense president when it comes to foreign affairs these days. It's a refreshing change in the way America sort of deals with both its allies and its opponents in the world. And as a result, he started cranking down on the sanctions in Iran, and the people of Iran are feeling the pinch. And you can see that they're unhappy about it in sort of growing tensions in their cities throughout the entire country. And then the crushing sanctions have also caused them to take to the streets even more than they did before, especially when they found out that now their leadership is apparently taking hundreds of millions of dollars, maybe billions of dollars, and putting it offshore. And so they're suffering while the elites and the religious leaders are secreting money away from the people of Iran. And so there's lots of protests. They're fueled by more information, as I said, that the mullahs are secreting money away. And now there's an escalating war of words between the Iranian president and our own over threats that they've made because they think we're in some fashion or another causing this unrest by our sanctions. Look, they got to get with it and get real about having to be stopped their work as a state sponsor of terror, get real about being a member of the international community, or those sanctions are going to continue. And actually, I'd be happy if the Iranian people rose up and threw the shackles off of this terrible regime. So that's a story to keep an eye on. I doubt seriously that the Iranian leaders are going to change their ways, but I think the people of Iran are getting fed up with it, and that's a good thing. Let's talk a little bit about state news. Our county and our state are experiencing things that we hadn't before in a fired-up economy. And so apparently California executives and some consumers are skittish about the local economy. Not at the current moment, but as they look out across the transom, I guess. So in a paper article that was published by the Register, done by Jonathan Lasner, he talked about several polls that were taken. There's a number of them that he cites by economists and public opinion surveyors that show a dip in confidence by both consumers and by the people who are purchasing agents for large businesses. It's a slight dip. It's not necessarily significant at this point, but it looks like the future might be a little cloudy in their point of view. Maybe the reason for that is sort of the pressure that Californians are feeling about the tax reform that Trump did, which affects us disproportionately because we have such a high tax burden, and that is not now deductible from federal taxes. Maybe it's a change in the atmosphere from the overburdening regulations that are constantly coming. Maybe it's a product of the gas tax that is beginning to pinch. But for whatever reason, both the purchasers and the business level and people are getting a little skittish about sort of the long-term future of our economy. And maybe it's just the fact that they're catching up with California's unsustainable debt. But something to keep an eye on. Local news, the heat is on. It seems like commencing July 1, just before the 4th of July, we started hitting really high temperatures, and the National Weather Service says we're in triple digits again this week. It is warm early, plus half the West is on fire, so there are a lot of states that are having brush fires, and that oppressive heat plus humidity doesn't necessarily help those firefighters who are on the front line, so keep them in mind. Please make sure that you're taking care of kids, seniors, and your pets, and keep them cool. When temperatures rise, sometimes we have to think about the fact that some seniors either don't have the resources or don't want to spend them on their air conditioning. So make sure that you're paying attention to the seniors in your neighborhood and those in your family. So that's your local news. I'm not going to do sports because I have so many things I have to ask my friend Kris, and I want to get her on camera and start going through this because there's no way I'm going to get through this entire interview. I've overwritten as always. So let me tell you a little bit about her as she comes in. Kris, come join me. She's actually had to listen to this.
Good morning. Hey, I'm just giving you a hug.
Okay, good. I like that. I like that better. Many of you know her, so I'm going to skim through her bio because there's way too much that she's done, and then we'll talk about some of the initiatives that she's actually done on council, which are somewhat mentioned in her bio, though not in the depth that I want to. Kris Murray was reelected in 2014 after first being elected in 2010 to the City of Anaheim Council. She has always represented the city at large, and notwithstanding the fact that they're in districts now, she's always been a representative for all the people of Anaheim. Yep. She's represented them also on regional bodies, including the Association of California Cities, Orange County, the League of California Cities, the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California, a very important body there, Southern California Water Committee, Southern California Association of Governments, the Orange County Council of Governments, the Transportation Corridor Authority, and many more. In her own hometown, however, she's incredibly active with her community, with the Boys and Girls Club of Anaheim, Cops for Kids, the Orange County Family Justice Center, Anaheim Beautiful, and many more. She's been a co-chair of the Anaheim Chamber of Commerce Economic Consortium and on the Gift of History Board of Directors. And if we have time, I'll ask her about that because it's a great program for, I think, third graders, right? And then, of course, she holds a bachelor's degree in political science from California State University, and something rare that most people don't get a chance to do, she has a master's certificate in transportation management from the Mineta Transportation Institute at San Jose State, which is renowned for transportation. And she's done a ton of other things that I don't have enough time to talk about, because if I do, I'll never get to my questions about you. Plus, she's my pal, and I enjoy being around her all the time. Welcome to Java with Jerry.
Thanks. It's a pleasure to be here.
So I want you to talk a little bit, Kris, because you're so steeped in it, and not everybody knows about the history of Anaheim, and tell us a little bit about our county's biggest city.
Well, thanks, Jerry. I appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit about our history. Anaheim is the oldest and most populous city in Orange County, founded in about 1857. Yeah. And our name is based on German settlers that came here in the mid-1880s. So Anna stands for Santa Ana River, and Heim is home in German. So it's literally home by the river. Home by the river. And we're very proud of our history in Anaheim. For a while in the late 1880s, we were actually the wine capital of the state.
The what?
The wine capital of the state. It was all grapes.
We don't have wine here unless it's in a restaurant.
I know. It all went down to Temecula and up to Napa and Paso. But nonetheless, Anaheim had the largest vineyards for wine grapes in the state in the mid to late 1880s.
I never knew we had. I'm tangled up in my cords somehow, Kris. I don't know how I do this. I'm like a kid in grammar school. I didn't know we had weather enough for wine. I thought you have to have cool mornings. No, we don't have cool mornings anymore.
I know. Well, I don't know. Maybe with less development, we got more of that coastal fog and coolness at the time. But nonetheless, some viruses wiped out the crops in the late 1880s, and everything switched over to citrus all over Orange County.
You always learn something when you watch Java with Jerry. Not because of me, but because of smart people.
So we switched over to citrus, and really was known for agriculture and the citrus industry, including our beautiful packing house, which I hope people will come visit.
It's a lot of fun.
But nonetheless, we were all about citrus and agriculture and farming up into the mid 1950s, when this little known gentleman named Walt Disney discovered some strawberry fields, and then we, in partnership with our city leaders at the time, built Disneyland in the 1955, and we became the tourism capital of the state, and in some cases the world, really.
Yeah. And now it's really much more than that, Kris, because it's not only a hot tourist spot, and it certainly is probably the #1 place in the world for people to come and visit. Millions of people come to Anaheim, which really explodes the Orange County economy because there's a benefit to all the surrounding cities as well, and the entire county benefits from that tourism.
And thank you for saying that, because both our Anaheim Resort area and our convention center are revenue streams for the county, which supports all residents and businesses and visitors to our entire county, and also has helped the entire county develop as a tourism destination. So it really has had that residual benefit to all communities.
And in hundreds of millions of dollars, this is no small little amount. I mean, for the city of Anaheim itself, probably about 40% of its income comes from
50% of our net income comes from the resort district.
It does?
Yes.
Wow. So more than I thought.
I'm sorry, not net, gross. And then about 25 to 30% of our net is from the resort district.
So that's a huge amount of money going into local parks and schools and police and fire protection and the quality of community services that we have. And we're going to talk a little bit about how Kris has been steeped in that. Let's talk a little bit, though, about some of the initiatives in the city now, because it's, home to two major sports teams. It's got the biggest convention center in the Western United States. But you've done some things that have helped in the pinch during the tough times. Let's talk about public safety and your initiatives, the 40 and 4 and the initiatives with fire.
Sure. So I think as a precursor to that, though, it's important to share that we were able to do some major reinvestments in both public safety and in our community services because of the strength of our business community. Our stadium district, both with the Honda Center and Angel Stadium, our convention center, which came in the 60s as a way to round out year-round tourism to Anaheim, and again as another revenue stream for the county. All of these things helped our city weather the recession and come out of it even stronger with investments that were being made by the Disneyland Resort at the same time as well. So where other cities in Orange County, even to this day, are still struggling to make ends meet and looking at sales tax increases and other fee increases to provide those services, Anaheim has been able to do it based on the investments made in our community.
Yeah, but that wasn't by accident. It wasn't just by the fortune of these things being here. It took a lot of work from city leaders to make that stuff happen.
No good public policy ever happens by accident. It really takes a lot of hard work. It takes bringing all stakeholders together, and oftentimes it means taking votes that it takes some courage, because you get a lot of pushback. You can't make everybody happy with public policy, and it means you really got to do your homework. But that being said, we were able to balance our budget and start growing back our cash reserves in 2011, right as the recession was formally declared over. And one of the first things we did was really focus in on public safety, particularly with our sworn police personnel, which were critically low, down to less than 350 for a population of more than 350,000 people.
Wow. That's a small number for that many people. So, but you led these initiatives. So, talk a little bit about the 4 and 4, the 40 and 4, and also about what you did with firefighters and fire equipment and the paramedics and the like, because that's all important.
So we called our 40 and 4 our full strength initiative, which was getting our sworn personnel back up to pre-recession levels. So getting from less than 350 to 404 budgeted positions for sworn officers, as well as doing additional resources they need to be able to do their job effectively.
And where are we now on this?
We are at 404.
So we
fully did it. And we did it in a conservative way. So why it's called 40 and 4 is we hired 10 a year for 4 years to bring 40 officers back online.
That's not easy to do, too, because you got to get them. You either got to bring them in as laterals, or you got to get them into an academy, and you got to really work at it.
We really put a lot into training and hiring a high caliber of officer into our department. And so, it doesn't happen overnight. It takes some time. And so we're still doing the hiring process, but the budget is there for it.
And then you added something like 15 firefighters?
We have added our fire personnel as well, but they are really our next priority as far as getting them back up to full strength, because not only do we need additional firefighters for our own community and its mutual aid around Orange County, but as we're seeing around the state, all of our departments are providing mutual aid to all of these fire disasters that are happening every single year because of the dryness and the drought conditions that we're dealing with in California.
And that's not the only place in public safety that you added to the quality of life. You were very big on marijuana dispensaries and sex offenders in our parks, and I think you should talk a little bit about that, because that's really protecting our kids.
Absolutely. It's been a challenge. When I took office, I didn't know I was going to be fighting medical marijuana dispensaries, but they were literally taking over our communities. And And people might think it's not that big a deal, but they bring a lot of traffic. They bring sometimes crime in with them. They are minimally regulated. They have a lot of cash on site, so they're robbed with some consistency. They have armed guards occasionally outside them, and so when they were developing inside our neighborhoods, literally renting out homes to operate, we came in with a moratorium and said we don't want them in our community. And we still play whack-a-mole trying to get them out, because they'll try to work. We have a wonderful thing called a public utility. So we have our own power and water, and those are convenient things to turn off when people refuse to comply with our regulations.
Do not tick off Councilwoman Murray, or you will not be able to flush a toilet.
We will pull all levers within our control and ultimately prosecute if they won't shut down.
Talk about taxpayer protection. You have taken some really bold stands on that, given the city and the nature of its government. So talk a little bit about what you've done.
Thank you. So Anaheim is a charter city, and there are many charter cities, over 100 in the state of California. And what I found out after taking office as well is that Anaheim was not being required because of court decisions to comply with a statewide ballot initiative that our residents voted for, to require 2/3 vote of the city council to put a tax increase on the ballot. And so I worked with our city attorney's office and with the local community, and we wrote the Anaheim Taxpayer Protection Act and put it before the voters in 2016, and it passed with over 70% of the vote. So we're now in full compliance with state law in requiring that threshold to put taxes forward on the ballot.
I love it. And other charter cities are following your lead now. Now others are doing the same thing.
Yeah, Irvine, Newport, and a few others have done it. We're hoping more in Orange County will, so we keep knocking on their doors.
Yeah, that's good.
And then also I'm actually working on a charter amendment that will be considered on Tuesday at the council meeting, so timely, to add even a higher threshold of requirements for the council once they put a tax measure on the ballot, to require greater transparency, accountability, and specificity as to how funds will be spent.
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, it's the people's money, and we really ought to have more information about it, and we really ought to ask our elected officials to play fair and square with us on that.
As well as signature gatherers. So I know we're going to talk about the other ballot initiative coming forward, we need a little truth and accountability on that side of it, too.
Don't give them hints about my interview. All right, I want to talk a little bit about, we talked about public safety, and we certainly talked about sort of the history of the town and what it's grown into. But let's talk about your efforts in economic development, because you've been very busy in that with the convention center effort that you had a big hand to play in, certainly Arctic's development. So let's talk about the kinds of things that have really kickstarted Anaheim's economy.
You know, another thing that doesn't happen by accident is quality economic development. And Anaheim, over the last 7 years, and I'm very proud to have played a significant role in this, is we've entitled $6 billion in new development. New development.
I knew there was a lot, but $6 billion.
$6 billion in new development.
That's what it
means. It includes the largest expansion of the Disneyland Resort since its construction in 1955, with the Star Wars themed land Galaxy's Edge, which is opening in 2019. It includes 4 new 4-star hotels, which will bring a higher wage level of job and also experience, and will retain more of our tourist dollars within our city boundaries rather than exporting that to wealthier communities.
And I learned in an interview that we did on this show, actually, with Jay Barres, who leads Visit Anaheim, that those 4-star hotels are critical for us landing the kinds of conventions we haven't been able to bring here. Things like NAMM, the big music conventions, and the kinds of folks who attend these things want to have nearby amenities. We've been outsourcing all of that to Newport, and sometimes they don't want to drive from Newport to come back in Anaheim.
Dana Point, a number of communities that have that level of hotel that we haven't had in Anaheim. Thank you, because that 7th betterment of the convention center has kept it the largest on the West Coast. We want to make sure we're bringing in those top tier conventions as well. So it has a multitude of benefits with those hotels. And then, of course, the convention center, Arctic, and other ancillary
Don't just skip over Arctic, Miss Graduate of Minetta. Tell everybody what Minetta is and how you happen to graduate from there, and what you know about transportation, because it's a bunch. And talk a little bit about Arctic and what it really means for the entire county.
Well, Norm Minetta, former Secretary Minetta, Congressman Congress member and Chairman Mineta, I actually had the opportunity to work with as a congressional staffer back in the early 1990s when he was chairman of the House.
When she was a child in the early
House
1990s.
Transportation Committee, yeah. And then he became Secretary of Transportation for President Clinton.
Yep.
I'm sorry, and all the way through with President Bush, he was the one who was on duty at 9/11 too, and shut down our airspace to protect all of our residents nationally. He's an incredible human being. So San Jose State, where he was from, formed the Transportation Institute in his name.
Yeah, and Kris, in a former life, used to do public policy for transportation at OCTA, which she's too shy to tell you about, but she was brilliant there. And so you went to the Mineta Institute. So talk about Arctic, though, because you do know transportation and transportation policy, Kris, and what Arctic means to the county and why it's being developed.
I think we should do like an interview of folks. What does Arctic stand for, and see how many people get close.
The Anaheim Regional Transportation Intermodal Center.
Exactly.
Only geeks who like transportation know the answer to
Exactly.
that. And we just showed our geekiness. Yeah.
Oh, totally.
But it is sort of the Union Station of Orange County, and we are larger than 22 states, and it's ridiculous that we didn't have a transportation hub. And so talk a little bit about why it's in Anaheim and where it is.
Absolutely. So Arctic is well, one, it's not only the Union Station or the central transportation point for Orange County, but it is also the centerpiece of what's called the Low Sand Corridor, which is the Los Angeles to San Diego. It's Los Angeles, Orange, San Diego commuter rail corridor for Amtrak and Metrolink, and Arctic is right in the center of that. It is its centerpiece, and Low Sand today is the second busiest commuter rail corridor in the country. And so people don't realize how many people in our communities rely on transit and commuter rail to get to and from work, or to and from school, or to and from family. And
it will be something, and it's a unique piece of architecture. You all see it. It's off of the 57 freeway when you're coming through.
Platinum LEED certified, so it has the highest environmental standards, and we're very proud of that building. It is an architectural wonder, and also will be a generational asset to not just Anaheim's community, but the greater Orange County community.
Yeah, it's a neat building. I keep promising my wife we're going to jump a train to Tustin and go up there and have dinner one night, and then drive a train back. But so we've talked about all of the economic development and all that other stuff is done, but you've got a big heart for kids in town, and you've done a lot for their programs. Talk a little bit about the kinds of things you've done in the community for our children.
Yeah, it's often not mentioned enough, and it's unfortunate, but we have a number of incredible programs to service all kids in our community. Our Community Services Department just does phenomenal work. We have invested in some extraordinary community centers over the last few years. I was very proud to champion the Ponderosa development that we were able to do without cost to taxpayers through developer mitigation fees and park fees, and out of the Platinum Triangle being developed for additional housing. The developers also put money into a park fund, and we committed that in 2011 to the Ponderosa Center. I hope people will take a look at that. Ponderosa is where some of our lowest economic families, the families who are really struggling day to day, live, and the school district built a brand new school there, a brand new library that we partnered with the city to finance so that it can stay open in the evenings for families.
Yeah,
and
you
now
worked
we
on
have this
expanded
beautiful
hours for them for the libraries. Yeah.
But Mira Loma Family Resource Center, a number of parks like at Ganita Lane, just making sure that the kids in our community have a safe place to play, to study, to learn, and to gather as families.
So not everything has been roses and rainbows and good planning. You've also been plagued with some real serious problems, and I want to talk a little bit about homelessness.
Yeah.
Anaheim became, for a while, the epicenter of a homeless crisis in our county, and sort of put the face on this entire problem. So talk about your initiatives, your efforts with Judge Carter along the riverbed, and what's come out of that, and about bridges, if you can.
Yeah, absolutely. So before everything got as bad as it did on the riverbed, we had started seeing and witnessing this escalation of homelessness, and it really is a complicated issue because it's, there are factors about the highest costs of housing in our region, the high cost of housing, and the loss of middle-income jobs, which have been chased out because of some really onerous regulations that unfortunately come from the state, and we've lost a lot of middle-income sectors that have left our state. So we've seen this it was a slow at first, but around 2015 it really started to escalate on homelessness. And so Anaheim partnered with the county in 2015 time frame to find the land for Bridges at Kramer Place and build the county's first full-service year-round homeless shelter, and there was a lot of opposition. Our last hearing had over 800 people attend, and it took some courage, and it took a lot of time and a lot of outreach to get that approved, but it is up and operating now, and I'm very proud of it because some of our staunchest critics are now some of our most passionate advocates for that facility. We need more Kramers around Orange County. So I'm very proud of that facility because it can show as an example to other communities that it won't have adverse impacts if it's managed correctly.
And we need some more help in the center of the county and down south for sure, so that all of the county is supporting its load on homelessness.
But then the riverbed really escalated as well and became a crisis situation, not only for the surrounding communities of Orange, Fullerton, Anaheim, and others, but for those who were living there. And so we formed a program called Operation Home Safe, which stood for Services, Aid, Fair Warning, and Enforcement. And the city partnered with the county to send law enforcement down there to get services. And within a few months, really with the county taking the lead at that point, once that policy had been approved, sheltered 740 people and cleared out the riverbed and restored and mitigated the riverbed.
But not just because of the county. It was your effort. It was working with Judge Carter, who had a case pending before him.
Judge Carter was essential to that.
You walked that riverbed with him, and you made a difference in those lives.
Yes, because Judge Carter is a federal judge who the cities of Orange, Anaheim, and Costa Mesa had been sued. We were in his courtroom, and he has taken such a leadership role in preventing lawsuits from limiting our ability to help those who are homeless and our surrounding communities with public safety. And the problem is not over. I tell everybody we have got a long road ahead of us with making sure we have the permanent supportive housing in place across the county. So Association of California Cities, Orange County, ACCOC, United Way, the County of Orange, and all of our 34 cities are working together to develop a housing trust, to create the funding that can help with that permanent supportive housing, and to get that housing permitted and up and running. It's going to be a long road. Yeah,
it is a long road. All right, I've only got a few minutes left, I'm being told, so I gotta switch gears to another pending major problem in front of you, and then I'm going to do our feature and get you on the road. But let's talk a little bit about this effort by some of your colleagues to, radically impair the economy you've worked so hard to build with this minimum wage effort, because now the whole world, not just the country, is looking at Anaheim and saying, you're going to have the highest minimum wage in the world. How are you handling
Well, definitely in the country. I don't know if it's in the world, but it definitely would be the highest in the nation.
Since we're the biggest economy, I suspect that's probably the highest wage in the world.
It's qualified for the ballot, and what's sad and really frustrating is that it was qualified because people went door to door, the proponents of this.
And went door to door lying.
Went door to door and literally were not truthful with our residents by saying...
She'll say not truthful because she's still in office.
Well, okay, they lied. They said, do you want Disney to pay a fair wage? Sign here. And people were like, oh, well, that sounds good, and signed. And literally, I've heard from dozens of residents who got that exact same line door to door. So it's
they were misled.
Well confirmed that our residents were misled.
But now it's on the ballot, Kris.
It's on the ballot.
And so the people of Anaheim really need to be wary of this because this could hurt small businesses. You're a small business owner yourself.
It really clobbers small business much more than the larger companies. And it's all under the guise of those who get subsidies, but our entire resort district is subsidized. It is, and it's not through, well, the resort district did have in the mid-1990s some pretty heavy bond financing where the city partnered with the resort businesses to establish that district, but it's created a revenue stream that funds almost 25% of all services for the city. That is a huge return on investment. In every community where these minimum wage increases, ours would go from the current state wage level to 15 immediately, and then to 18 within a couple years, and then an annual increase of 2% or CPI forevermore. So Anaheim will always potentially be the highest in the country. It will cost us jobs. We will have people either automate or reduce their their workforce and our small businesses that are family run and owned and operated will be the hardest hit.
Yeah, don't buy the lie on this, because it's not going to help
Right.
one of the most important economies in the county. Okay, I'm getting fair warning that I've got to hurry up and shut up. So let me thank you, Kris. We're
Thank
gonna
you.
have you back again, because I've got more questions for you we didn't get done. So we'll bring back the would-be supervisor. We never talked about the fact that you've declared for supervisor in the county, so you're running for
third
office.
district, yeah.
Yes. All right, we'll talk more about that. We'll bring her back. All right. Here's your feature today for you boomers. It's How to Speak Millennial, and the brilliant staff has found a phrase this time: sorry, not sorry. So sorry, not sorry is used to express a lack of regret or repentance, and apparently it's being used a lot by politicians these days. Anyway, typically it's used to signify that the speaker does not care whether their behavior emotionally upsets someone else. I'm not a big fan of that song, Sorry, Not Sorry. So there you go. That's how you use sorry, not sorry for all of you who need to speak to your millennials. You're not getting a raise. Sorry, not sorry. Okay, you use it any way you want to. So I just threw that in because we did reviews yesterday, and so I've got my staff laughing. All right, look, it's time for me to get out of here. We want you to come back every Wednesday and come join us. You see people like Kris and you learn a lot. And our guests get to go home with their own Java with Jerry mug. So there's your gift to take with you, your party gift. But that means you got to bring it back next time you visit so we can talk some more. We'll be back next Wednesday. We will have more news and we will have more reviews. We hope you have a great, productive week. Be careful out there, make good decisions, and we'll see you next Wednesday on Java with Jerry.
Bye, everybody.